The King of the Monsters returns in his very first anime epic. It's the brand new Netflix original movie, Godzilla, Planet of the Monsters. To be perfectly honest, I'm surprised it took this long to get a proper Godzilla anime movie. It seems like the perfect idea, and something that should have been done hundreds of times over. Godzilla is one of the largest pop culture icons of all time, pun intended, starting out as one of the original giant movie monsters and creating the kaiju movie genre. Having over 30 films, being in video games, television series, Godzilla is easily the biggest giant movie star of all time. And it makes sense that he would finally get an anime series. We just had to wait a really long time to get it. And luckily, the wait was worth it, as Godzilla Planet of the Monsters is not only a refreshing take on the Godzilla lore, but it also has a lot of really great style. It's done by Polygon Pictures. These are the guys who have worked on shows like Knights of Sidonia and even Ajin Demi-Human. They're known for their mixing their styles of traditional anime with cell shading and even some CG work. So this is effectively a CG animated film, but it certainly feels more like watching a traditional anime, and that's thanks to some surprisingly great animation, some really great facial expressions, and some very fluid and very action-packed action scenes. That and the fact that it's Godzilla in anime form. He's giant, he's massive, he's terrifying, and he is incredibly destructive. But the most unique thing about Godzilla Planet of the Monsters, without a doubt, has to be the actual story. Unlike the other movies, which are basically about Godzilla fighting a monster in a city and saving the day, this is going into the whole post-apocalyptic route, albeit in a much different sense. Basically, it starts out like any traditional Godzilla. Monsters start showing up, destroying cities, and so does Godzilla. But this time, Godzilla not only kills all the monsters, but starts to kill all of humanity and even the very planet itself. And mankind has no choice but to retreat from Earth and go up into the stars to try and find a brand new home, with the help of some brand new aliens and extraterrestrial races, which actually end up mingling with the humans themselves. Do they have ulterior motives? Do they want to take out Godzilla as well? That adds a little bit of intrigue to the series, but these humans find themselves drifting through space for upwards of 20 years, finding no answers, no home, and wondering if they can even return back to Earth after all of this time, for the fear that traveling through space has completely altered the actual ecosystem of the planet itself, due of course to the fact that they've traveled to a faraway place. Earth has actually advanced basically 10,000 years into the future, and evolution has completely taken hold of the planet in a horrifying new way. Of course, there is a main character in the story, and he goes by the name of Haruo Sakaki, and he has a personal vendetta against Godzilla. Basically, he's gonna be our hot-headed hero. He's our Eren Yeager from Attack on Titans. He wants to kill all the Titans. This guy wants to kill Godzilla because Godzilla killed his parents when he was escaping from the planet. So he has a personal vendetta against the King of the Monsters himself, and he even has been studying the creature and comes up with some really great plans to actually taking it down. There is a bleakness to this Godzilla movie that is very absent from a lot of the other major entries in the series. The first half of the Godzilla movies started out as sort of horror and then de-evolved into this massive monster who fought against aliens and creatures to protect the people of Earth, and then he became a force of nature again. This is quite literally transforming Godzilla into a real piece of nature. And the main reason for that is because Godzilla himself has effectively evolved to the point where he is transformed into a massive living plant. He's basically Tree Godzilla at this point, and this has enabled him to have a lot of new abilities and has even made him even bigger than before. This is the biggest Godzilla by far at over 300 meters. Now, to put that into perspective, the Godzilla in this movie can actually pick up the original Godzilla with its hands and just eat it. Right there. Picking it like an apple off the tree. That's how disturbingly big this thing is. And before I go any further, let me just say spoiler warning, as this is also a very unique Godzilla in that there are two Godzillas in the entire film. In fact, most of this movie, they're battling against what they believe to be the original Godzilla, and it looks like that is the case throughout most of the movie. And this Godzilla is only 50 meters tall. They manage to fight it and barely make it out with any of their forces alive. They have this latch-ditch effort where they figure they can get into it by boring these huge weapons into his dorsal fins, which will mess with his electromagnetic waves, which will get rid of this weird sort of invisible force field around Godzilla, allowing them to get in there and damage him, and they actually do it. They end up blowing up Godzilla in this, like, ridiculously over-the-top fashion. It's like watching freaking Sheriff Brody shoot Jaws at the end of Jaws. It's just awesome. I absolutely loved it. And this would have been a really great way to end the movie. It would have made something really distinctive and different. But it's clear that they're building up to something else, as at the very end of the film, a brand new Godzilla emerges from the ground, as if it's almost been in hibernation this entire time. And this is the real Godzilla of this brand new animated film trilogy. Yes, it's going to be a trilogy. We're going to see more of these. It's made clear by the end of this movie that this is not a complete story yet. The movie sort of abruptly ends, and it kind of annoyed me how it did it, to be perfectly honest. But the overall image of ending with this super giant version of Godzilla, which just destroys everything with one massive blast of his breath, and then swinging his tail, and it just takes out everything in this giant V of pure raw fire and destruction. Whew, man, they made Godzilla scary again, and I really do like that. So, it looks like I can't even pronounce the names of this series, Haruo Sakaki and all of his friends have made it to the planet. They're attacked by all of these monsters. They find Godzilla. They seemingly defeat him, only to discover that it wasn't even the real Godzilla the entire time. It was just something that divided from him like a cell and transformed into that form of Godzilla. They have their work cut out for them. Although I have a feeling in the next movie they might have access to a superpowered weapon, which is teased at the very beginning of this movie. Mechagodzilla is going to appear in this film series, and it appears that he's going to have an important role in the next one. I wish we could have seen a little bit more of him in this movie, but man, what a great tease. Hardcore fans are definitely going to know who Mechagodzilla is. And that brings me, honestly, to I think the only detriment of this film right here. It doesn't care if you don't know anything about Godzilla. It assumes that you have at least watched a couple of the classic films, because they don't go into any sort of origin for the creature or anything. You just need to know what Godzilla is all about when you jump right in here. Not to mention there are little cameos and things that are thrown out throughout the entire film, like the opening of the movie. You get to see some monsters. I believe I saw Orga from Godzilla 2000 at the beginning of the movie, and maybe even a few other monsters coming up out of the earth. I don't know if that was Baragon or maybe that was Varan. I'm not sure. As a hardcore kaiju fan, I always like to name drop monsters and everything, and I'm really hoping we'll get to see some more interpretations of the classic. At least we know we're definitely going to get to see some Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. But honestly, the best thing about this is definitely the setting. The post-apocalyptic Earth, which has evolved. The actual planet itself is just as much as a character as the other people in the actual movie. And basically everything on the planet has become sort of like encased in this like metallic layer that has transformed it. So like plants are now like razor sharp. Like if you touch a leaf, it's going to cut you. It's really freaking extreme. All of the monsters themselves, which seem to have seemingly divided from Godzilla's cells, are slightly reminiscent of him, but they have this like hard, almost like wooden looking skin, almost like a mixture of like wood and musculature, the way it actually looks, and it gives them a lot of distinctiveness and it makes them really freaky. I also love that the humans here have a lot of really cool technology like tanks and battle suits, so we have mecha armor going up against these guys, and giant freaking flying motorcycles which they use to dive bomb Godzilla. It's insane. That, though, like I said, I think the only really, like, weak things are, like I said, you have to have a little bit of knowledge of Godzilla. That and that the main characters themselves really aren't all that great. I haven't really found myself attached to any of, like, the big main characters yet, especially the main guy, Haruo Sakaki. Like I said, he just comes across as, like, the typical, like, hothead. But hopefully there's going to be a little bit more to his personality outside of, I hate Godzilla, let's kill Godzilla. They introduce a female character by the name of Yuko, who clearly has the hots for him, is definitely going to be something of a romantic interest, and who knows, maybe her character could do something cool. We have these alien races which are in the show, which look like humans, but to me, it's almost like a riff on, like, fantasy characters. Like, there's the elves and the dwarves and the humans. It kind of has that fantasy element to it, and the fact that we have aliens in the show that almost seem like they have ulterior motives as well, I think is going to be really interesting. What I will say is the human story is, to me, one of the weakest things here, although they did a great job of showing how desperate humanity is, the fact that they're in space and that they're running out of supplies for everyone, and they actually decide to jettison an entire shuttle of old people into space, which just explodes, which shows how incredibly desperate they are, and they realize that they're at the end, and that's why they have no choice but to go back to a monster-infested Earth, ruled by the king of the monsters himself, Godzilla. What I will say is the biggest strength of this movie has to be the visuals. It looks fantastic. Even the scenes when they're inside of the ship, all of the techno-babble jargon stuff on the screen, everything just looks really clean. The character designs are okay. They're not super distinctive outside of some characters have a different hairstyle, and some are male and some are female. Godzilla himself looks pretty cool. He's definitely reminiscent of like a combination of different designs from the past, almost looking a little too close to the one that we saw in the most recent American version, the Gareth Edwards version. And like I said, the biggest distinctive thing about this one is just how big it is. It's just insane. This is the largest Godzilla that we've ever seen. It's hard to tell when you're looking at it on the screen in comparison to other Godzilla movies, but if you do like a size chart and you look at it, you can truly see like how big this thing really is. It's even bigger than Shin Godzilla. It's nuts. So really, I can only recommend this movie to Godzilla fans. That's really the only problem with it. You kind of have to like it. Otherwise, you're just going to be jumping into this ridiculous sci-fi thing, which looks really pretty, but might not have a lot of substance for you if you're not a fan of the actual franchise. That being said, you don't necessarily have to see the previous Godzilla stories to appreciate this. This is a brand new take on the franchise, and I can't wait to see if it's got any ties to any of the other classic ones. What I will say is we have another brand new iteration of Godzilla, and it's pretty exciting to know that we're going to get more. Hopefully we'll get to see more from the actual Godzilla in the sequel, and hopefully more scenes of him fighting against monsters, which is something that I truly want to see. I want to see what Polygon Pictures is going to do that and how to make those scenes look really exciting. So, Godzilla, Planet of the Monsters. It's a giant-sized movie on Netflix that you guys should definitely check out. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. Honestly, this with Shin Godzilla has been like my favorite Godzilla stuff that I've seen since probably Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant All Monsters Attack. I liked Final Wars as well, but it's been a long time since I've seen something that's got me kind of invested just as much in the human characters as the actual story with all the giant monsters and everything, which ultimately might disappoint some people, but that is something you have to know. Even in the actual Godzilla movies themselves, Godzilla's not in the movies that much. Like, he's only in it for maybe 20, half hour at most, just about every single film. They're standout scenes, and they're always really memorable, but most of the story does focus around the humans. And at least this time, the actual story seems like it's going to be pretty interesting, very heart-pounding, and a big survival on Earth. Let's get excited for more Godzilla, guys. That's my thoughts about this brand new movie on Netflix. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. If any of you guys have watched Godzilla, Planet of the Monsters, please tell me what you guys thought about it in the comment section below. Are you a Godzilla fan? Are you checking this out? If you're not a Godzilla fan, what did you think of it overall, and what do you hope to see from the sequels? Basically, just tell me all of your thoughts and have a pretty cool discussion about Planet of the Monsters in the comments section. Thank you guys again for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay down there, baby.